State who you are for the camera.
Barry Feudale,
All right, and you are.
known as the Flying Judge.
All right. How did you first get interested in flying? When did it start for you?
It's a multiple part answer. First, as a young boy, my mom noted that was one of my first words when I would look up and see an airplane. And then when I finally got my first bicycle, I rode down to the airport. I was around 11 or 12 and got a ride from the flight instructor down there. My mom and dad did not know I went there. And then the most important thing is when I went in the Navy, when I was on the aircraft carrier off the coast of Vietnam, I was a weatherman that briefed pilots that were flying into danger.
So, all in all, you have three different deciding factors that got you interested in flying. When did that all start to get focused to the goal of you becoming a pilot someday?
That actually occurred after I had made the decision not to run for a second term as judge. And I decided that the way to earn a living, if I wasn't a full-time judge in Northumberland County, was to learn to be a pilot so I could fly around the state and hopefully be able to spend more time at home and also be able to get assignments in multiple counties rather than just a few.
All right. Now, where did the interest in actually becoming a judge come from?
Well, I never had aspirations for law or judge. I was a poor student in grade school and high school, near the bottom of my class in high school. The nuns used to say that Barry would be able to do things if he only applied himself. It wasn't until I got into the Navy that I got focused on doing something other than caring about cars, motorcycles, and airplanes. Not much has changed over the years. As far as judging, the picture over my left shoulder, as a new lawyer, I tried a murder case, and I came to appreciate the importance of a good, fair, and honest judge in the judge that presided over my trial. And that influenced me to think that maybe someday I could become a judge.
All right. So for you, I know growing up as your son that being a judge took you away from home a lot, but you always sort of made the connections to Matt and I, whether it was through reading in books with Matt or adventure with me. You introduced me to flying, I think, before I could even really speak. So, what was it that, because I know you attempted with Matt, but you saw that it wasn't really something. What was it that got you excited when, okay, one of my sons at least has a love for this type of stuff too?
Well, you were 2.5, a little older than 2.5 when you went on the first flight with me shortly after I became a pilot, which is about 26 years ago, 25 years ago. And that was much to your mother's chagrin, I might add. But you seem to have a sense of adventure. I got a little headset for you, for your small head, and a couple pillows so that you could see out the window. And you seem to enjoy it, where you're right, your older brother, it was just a way of getting from point A to point B.
Yeah. All right, so you always had sort of that sense of adventure and, the love of that. Aside from flying, what other things would you say you have for escapes?
Well, reading, something I did not do much of. The only book I kept from high school was Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy. I still have it. The pages are falling out and yellowed. But reading came to me in the Navy, especially when I was off the coast of Vietnam, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. I literally read many of the books in that small library and had a greater appreciation for being able to learn about the world, which I had very little interest in prior to that.
It seems like a lot of things harken back to the Navy. Would you say that in a lot of ways, without the Navy, you don't think you'd be the man that you are today?
I think without question, I joined the Navy because I was in conflict with my father, and it was sort of an escape, but I kind of found myself in the Navy. I was entrusted with being the recruit chief petty officer only because I evidently was smarter than my grades showed in high school and grade school. And I was given leadership by being the recruit chief petty officer. And from there, I just felt that any challenge, maybe I could accomplish something more than what I thought when I was in grade school and high school.
There was a time in your life recently where, life kind of took a downturn. You had just come off one of your most successful cases. Most people would argue the case that you're most known for, where you were the judge in charge of the grand jury that took down Jerry Sandusky. And immediately coming off of that, now mind you, that could have been your swan song. You easily could have walked off into retirement, ending on that high note, but you knew that there was something more that needed to be done, someone else that needed to be taken down. Would you mind speaking a bit about that case and where it started and how it ended and how that affected you?
Well, I did achieve a lot. I think sometimes it's circumstances. It was very outstanding people that I worked with that were involved in grand jury investigations into organized crime and public corruption. I got that appointment after I sat on the Commonwealth Court, which is a court of appeals, for a period of time. And I think I got the appointment because they knew I had no personal agendas other than, it sounds corny, seeking justice. I couldn't be influenced by money. I couldn't be influenced by power. And I think I was a pretty good grand jury judge. I made an error in judgment in not leaving after some of the key figures in the Sandusky investigation. I should have left after the new attorney general was elected. Little ego there, maybe a lot of ego. I thought that perhaps I could still deal with the kinds of things I had been dealing with. And within a matter of months, I learned that the corruption that was endemic to her administration was not something that I was able to deal with. And I got taken down, and I got taken down hard.
It seemed like around that time, your mental state kind of took a bit of a deterioration, maybe as a harsh blow to the ego. It seemed like for the first time in your life, your physical health sort of followed, and you chose to take yourself out of flying. My question is, that was always an escape for you. How did you manage to bounce back? I know it took time, but how did you manage to bounce back when you gave up one of your greatest escapes?
I'll just pause for a moment before I answer that specific question to say that three things occurred at the same time. You were part of the one when I went to a mountain. Mountaineering was something that I found very fascinating. It was something you did on your own, usually with other people, but climbing high mountains. And when I was in Peru with you, I had an incident where I suffered cerebral and pulmonary edema and hypoxia. It was right after that I found that I was having difficulty handling the complex and controversial cases I was known for. I stood down from the Commonwealth Court voluntarily, a very prestigious appointment. And the grand jury I stood down from for several months. I was talked into coming back. Still, the Sandusky investigation was continuing with regard to the president, Spanier, and other people in the administration. And I think I came back a little bit too soon, in all candor. I was depressed after the mountain. I was depressed after I was taken down. And but for family, meditation, exercise, I was able to pull myself out of that hole that I was in for, I don't know exactly how long a period of time. My family and friends would know better than me.
Now then, you gave up flying of your own free will, but you went back on the things that you did love: meditation, mountaineering, hiking, bicycling. And you got yourself back to a point where, was it that you felt comfortable again, that, hey, I could start flying? Or was it just a need to fly again? Or a bit of both?
I think the last thing you said is what it was. It was a bit of both. I took myself out of the game, just like I took myself out of the game on Commonwealth Court, and then got taken out of the game with regard to my grand jury work. But I returned to it after 4 years. I flew a few times in the interim. My brain started to recover as much as a brain can recover from the incident of hypoxia.
So that affected you in a lot of negative and in a lot of ways that, few years span. The man that I always knew growing up, as my father and everything, I didn't exist for those few years. I didn't know who you were. And in recent times, you've gotten back to him in a lot of ways, and my dad's back. What would you say are a lot of the factors, not just factors that you've done, but any external factors in your life that have played into you, getting back to you?
Well, it's interesting you put my dad's back when you mentioned that being a line of inquiry with regard to how you felt about me and how I presented during those difficult times. I was aware of it, but I didn't realize it had such an impact on my loved ones, to tell you the truth. I remember a friend about 2 years ago made the comment, "Barry's back." And, I knew I was never quite there like I used to be, but it was an interesting comment that was made by one of my mountaineering friends, and then my son making that. Because here's the problem. Being back to my family is much more important than being back to my friends.
Yeah.
And their loss, I can't change what I was not. The measure of the man was not the measure of the man that you grew up with. Not that it was a perfect measure of a man, but it wasn't the man that you grew up with, that you mountaineered with, that you rode in the airplane with or flew in the airplane with. And those were years that are lost, but the amazing ability of the brain to recover, I attribute to your question, again, to being meditation. Flying really was therapeutic. Bicycling, motorcycling, all were a big help because they're important to your physical health as well as your mental health. And it was a combination of things, plus family, that dearly cared for me and always supported me, even if I was a bit of an asshole at times.
And one thing that I always kind of noticed was, in a lot of ways, you were getting back to who you were by yourself. But it was after the introduction of a very specific person that I want to talk about for a little bit. Tina Marie, your significant other now. How did you two meet, and how have you seen any changes in your life since then?
A friend, Tina Lehau, also named Tina Marie, said to Tina Marie Bombalski, my girlfriend, my significant other, as you call it, that I was all over the place over the last year or so. And I was all over the place trying to find someone, something beyond the things that I already had that nourished my soul. And of course, I divorced your mother. It was probably the most difficult decision I ever made. And incidentally, she always was there for me. We had disagreements. We each said some unkind things, me more than she. But she still is supportive and, quite candidly, is good friends with Tina Marie, which she, to my amusement, a couple of months ago says, I really like her. Matter of fact, I like her more than I like you. You get on my nerves sometimes. And that made me laugh because it was true. And but Tina Marie is, as you know, 20 years younger than me. I had reservations about that. I mean, I am somewhat younger in body and not so much mind as a result of what happened on the mountain. But she had life experiences that showed a lot of bravery and courage. I admire strong women. She's a strong woman. She's beautiful. But there's a lot of beautiful women out there. But to find somebody that's kind and nurturing, she's a good cook. And wonderful mother, wonderful grandmother. And we've become quite close over I met her at the airport. She was dating or with someone else at the time. And I just noticed, like I did with your mother, a beautiful smile. I know that sounds hokey and cheesy. It does. But a smile is important. And that's all that I noted. I invited her son, or she asked me to take her son. I was looking for recruits for skydiving, another one of my adrenaline junkie pursuits. And she called me and said her son was interested. And he and his best friend were the only two that went. The other 8 people that I had recruited dropped out at the last minute. And she invited me down to Knoebels to buy me some slices of pizza. and we talked for hours, and that's when I became interested in what was the measure of this woman.
State your name for purpose of the documentary.
Tina Marie Bombalski.
All right, and what's your relation to the Flying Judge?
I am his girlfriend of 7 months now.
All right. How'd you guys meet?
Very interesting. I was actually over at the Northumberland County Airport, and we were having a little cookout. And the next thing I know is I see your father walking up, and he was just got off his Harley, and he has his tank top on, and he has tattoos all over him, and he comes over and he starts talking to us. And as I'm looking at him and listening, I'm trying to put everything together, and it's coming to me like, first I put together, he's a lawyer? You know, this guy that just rode up on his Harley, and so I kept listening to him even more, and as I was putting all the little things together that he was saying, it also came to me that he's a judge. So it was really interesting to see, you know, someone who I would not have thought, you know, to be a lawyer, judge, and all that. Yes, that's what he did.
All right.
Very interesting.
So he says that he took your son that just got out of the Marines.
Skydiving, yes.
Skydiving.
Yes, yes.
And you took him to Knoebels for pizza as sort of a
thank you for not letting my son die. Yes.
All right. But he said that you guys just sat there and talked for hours. Now that's how he words it.
Yeah, we talked. We kind of, I guess, gave each other a little intro to our lives.
All right.
Yeah, very interesting.
What'd you think of his life story?
Very captivating, to tell you the truth. Very captivating.
Yeah,
very many adventures, very many stories. I could honestly, I could listen to him for hours. I really could.
Good. How's it been for you since you guys have been together? Because even though, yes, this is on him, but I'm interested in how he's sort of
impacted my life.
Yeah, and affected you.
He's opened my eyes to a lot of things. I mean, his world travels. I've heard so many stories that just fascinates me, captivates me, kind of makes me jealous, to tell you the truth. So much information he's filled my head with. I mean, things I would never have thought of. I mean, he's explained so many different things of the world that I never got to experience. And hopefully we're going to get to do some of it together now, exploring things.
Here's hoping.
Hi, my name's Violet Nazerski Fewdale.
All right, and what is your relation to the Flying Judge?
I am his ex-wife.
All right. So let's talk through the years. You've obviously seen him throughout all of his, with all the years that you've been with him, you've seen him through all of his highs, all of his lows, all of his, you know, his dark moments. What to you in all these years were some of, you know, would you say are like major highlights for you? Not bad ones, we'll get to those, but
Good
major
ones.
highlights.
Well, I think when he ran for judge years ago, he ran against a millionaire's son, if I could say that. And many people said that he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell to make it, and he did. But he got out there and he worked. We had a good support system, a lot of aunts, they called them. The aunts came out of the woodwork to help him, and all the money in the world didn't help that guy. But, you know, win. But that was a highlight, you know, the day that was one of the highlights. And then naturally you boys were the biggest highlights of our life.
But, you know, you had your dark times with him, as I did, in a lot of ways that I felt that, you know, my parents will never, you know, get along again. What was it like for you in those times, seeing a man that, you know, you loved and spent so many years in your life, and then it was to the point to where you couldn't really stand to be around him?
It was very difficult. You know, if you recall, back in 2003, we separated for 5 years. You were only 10 years old. And it was very hard. That's got to be the hardest day of my life, was when we were telling you and your brother that we were separating. And we made it the best we could. And it was the hardest time of my life is when we had to tell you. But it got to the point, but we did get together after 5 years. Things were going good, but after we were together about a year, it wasn't so great. He always said that he was going to do what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it, and with who he wanted to do it. And if you remember Daddy, that was how it was.
Those days don't seem like they're really a thing anymore. You know,
No.
It seems you and Dad are, I don't want to say you know, back to how you used to be, but you're back to being friends.
Yes.
And, you know, that's plain for anyone to see. You know, you guys aren't upset to see each other. You're happy. You'll give each other hugs and say hi and ask how things are going.
Hmm.
What would you say is a big proponent to, you know, the change in Dad over the past few years?
I think he's mellowed a little bit, probably because of his age. He's several years older than me. I won't say my age, but he's several years older than me. And I think, you know, naturally he's well into retirement and stuff. I think as we get older, we get wiser. We realize our mistakes. I'm not saying I was an angel, but I was pretty good. I was up there, though.